we come from that on the basis that we want to determine what we can do, that we want to be able to openly live our lives and to make our sexual choices, and to have the means to do so. And some of us choose sex work to do that. And I myself, I came out about in the late 80s, and in the feminist scene where I was, the kind of sex workers were kind of regarded a bit as exotic, because in Germany, where I grew up, sex work was legalized, but that means you have kind of controlled zones, so it was only in certain areas. And because it was legalized, it was kind of controlled, so there was also pimping, and we as feminists kind of really didn't want anything to do with that. And some of the pimps also kind of were really wary of us. So it was kind of really separate, and a lot of us, myself included, were kind of sitting on the fence, because on the one hand we wanted to support all women, but on the other hand we didn't really know how to connect with it. And later when I came here to the UK, I kind of got fed up with some of remarks by feminists who were really kind of patronizing towards sex workers, and who kind of only saw things from their own point of view. I mean, they didn't want to go into sex work, and which is of course their right and their choice, but that means other women should really have the right to choose how to live and how to make their choices. And particularly from the background that we as lesbians were kind of also regarded as kind of bad women and deviants decades ago, and were kind of vilified and regarded as unfit mothers and so on. So it's not that long ago that we were regarded similar as sex workers are regarded now. And from that background, we kind of want to campaign together with the ECP for decriminalization, because then in decriminalization women can work openly and can ask for help against violence, and can also campaign for decent working conditions. Then it becomes work like other work. And from that background, we earlier this year, Queer Strike and the ECP launched an open letter, consenting sex is not a crime, which asks people to support decriminalization. And we already got some signatures, among others from Rupert Everett and from Grayson Perry. And we would ask people to sign the letter and to circulate them in their networks. Yes, I think it's also generally about kind of moralism, because it is related to sex, and I think it was also about controlling sexuality, and I think that's why it's such a pity that feminists are kind of have this anti-sex worker stance, because they themselves fought against being controlled as women, and we also as lesbians. I mean, years ago, I was also kind of looking at the Swedish model, and first wasn't sure whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, because it wasn't really, because there was a distance, to the prostitutes. I didn't really know enough about the situation of prostitutes, and that it actually could worsen their situation. And I think that's the thing you really have to spell out. What are the consequences of that for the women? Because a lot of the feminists just talk about it as it would only impact on the men. And that's one thing. And then the other thing is that with all the anti-prostitution arguments for feminists, that they only look at a kind of representation of sex, and not really at, let's say, at the economics. I mean, let's say if women would have to leave prostitution, let's say from one day to the other, so what would happen? I mean, there are too many women already stuck in minimum wage jobs. I mean, and in the current situation where we get less and less benefits. So, I mean, that's the other thing that the feminists don't mention, the economic reasons.
Hi, mine's just a quick contribution. I'm also with Queer Strike, and what we found really with the open letter is that there's really, we're getting a lot of really positive responses from grassroots LGBTQ groups, you know, people who really support the rights, including people who are sex workers themselves, and also, you know, maybe our partners who are sex workers and want to defend the rights of people to be able to work without violence and without police arrest and imprisonment and deportation. So on one hand, we're getting that, you know, people like Queers Against the Cuts, Brighton Feminist Collective, Hurstbrad Queer Social Centre, and that's really, really encouraging, and in fact we're getting a really good response. On the other hand, some groups which are, again, the more establishment groups, you know, like who are very much in with the government on many policies, for example, like Stonewall, have said nothing, have said absolutely nothing on that issue, have said nothing about benefit cuts, have said nothing, you know, about the further criminalisation, have said nothing about why 25% of young people on the streets are queer. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, I think the benefit cuts issue is really, really essential, and what the government policies that they're bringing in, also in fact of deporting queer asylum seekers, while on the one hand appearing to be queer friendly. You know, there's gay marriage, which is it is important. It is something that we've won over the years, but at the same time, the government's pretending to be so, you know, really queer friendly, and they are really putting people on the streets, deporting people back to torture and death. You know, and that's happening at the moment. So that's also just connecting the issue. And also we have someone else here who's been extremely helpful with this whole campaign, and for many years, Carrie G, journalist at the back, who has been very supportive of this and is also one of the early signers of the open letter. So that support has really fueled, you know, this letter getting around, and I think the whole discussions that we're having here, which is really, it's really great to have these sort of discussions.